Welcome to the Resilience Series. I'm Stephanie Weaver, the author of the Migraine Relief Plan and the upcoming Migraine Relief Plan Cookbook. For that project, I'm interviewing a variety of people about the topic of resilience. And I'm very excited to welcome my special guest today, Kim Campbell. Kim was married to music legend Glen Campbell for 34 years until his passing in August of 2017. Following a long and very public battle with Alzheimer's. And the success of their documentary opened a national conversation about caregiving and Alzheimer's. Kim created careliving.org to encourage other caregivers to take care of themselves while caring for others. She established the Kim and Glen Campbell Foundation to advance the use of music as medicine, and she's a nationally recognized advocate for caregivers. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
It's really nice to see you. And I'm just going to hold up your wonderful book. So Kim's memoir is called Gentle on My Mind. And we'll talk about that a little bit at the end too. So you and I were working together. We met because you were working together on a TED style talk when Glen passed in 2017. And you chose to continue to work on that talk, even though you were grieving. Can you tell us about your decision to go public with a very private illness experience?
Well, initially, back in 2011, when we got the diagnosis, Glen was all set to go out and do a 5-week tour to promote an incredible album that had just been released called Ghost on the Canvas. And the critics were raving about it. We were excited about it. Our 3 children, Cal, Shannon, and Ashley, all fabulous musicians. In fact, Cal travels with Beck now as one of his musicians, and Ashley is got her an album out right now. Anyway, they're great musicians. They were traveling with Glen and backing him up. We were so excited to go out and do this tour, and then we got slammed with this diagnosis, and we really didn't know much about Alzheimer's at all at the time. We knew that Glen was having memory issues, and there were other symptoms as well. We didn't really know what was going on, but we just had to sit down as a family and with our organization and decide, if we were going to go out and continue to perform. And really, it was Glen's decision to go public with his diagnosis, because I was talking to him and I said, honey, what happens if you're on stage and you do something really weird, He said, I'll just tell him I got Alzheimer's. And I thought, well, what a concept, be open and honest about what you're going through. And so, like I said, it was his decision to go public. And I was so worried that, no one would want to come out, buy a ticket, and see Glen Campbell perform with Alzheimer's. And, maybe they would think it was too sad, or maybe they would want to remember him at the height of his career. But it was the exact opposite. Our very first show was sold out, standing room only. And the minute he walked on stage, they stood on their feet and they applauded and rooted for him like he was Rocky with a guitar. And I have to say, he did some of his finest performances. He didn't miss a beat. In the early stages of Alzheimer's, especially with music, that's so deeply embedded, especially for Glen, who's one of the best guitar players in the world. And, he'd been singing his songs thousands of times, and he just loved music. And music is so therapeutic for all of us, if you're a little depressed, or if you've got some kind of cognitive issue. All music is just so therapeutic. So it was his decision to go public with the diagnosis and to continue performing. And it worked out so well for us. It was such a blessing. The documentary came out of that, Glen Campbell, I'll Be Me, which is an incredible documentary. So if you're younger and you really don't know Glen Campbell, the documentary is so worth seeing, because not only do you get a feel for his whole life and your life together and your family, but this whole experience that you went through. And I would also say that, Glen was of the generation where stars weren't public about things. It was like the facade was kind of a big deal. And so it was even more, I think, impactful that for those of his fans who were kind of his age, that he was honest and your family was honest about it. So I think you changed
a lot of the conversation with that decision. And you also have this really beautiful testament to all of you in that movie. I mean, I feel like I know your kids. I've never met your kids, but I feel like I know them because of the movie. So it's really very special. So you and Glenn moved to Nashville when his disease was already quite challenging. Can you tell us about the meeting that you had with that new doctor and what he said to you? Not so much about Glenn's diagnosis, but what he said to you, because that's what I kind of wanted to focus on.
Yeah, sure. When we first moved to Nashville, I wanted to find a neurologist to, help monitor Glenn's progression and the medications that he was on. The film covers the beginning and middle stages of Alzheimer's, but it doesn't take you into the late stages. And that's what we were experiencing when we moved to Nashville. So I was dealing with things that I never dreamed I'd deal with. And one of them was Glenn became very combative. So he had lost the ability to understand language or to communicate verbally. So that was really challenging. And I think it was frustrating for him because if I was trying to get him to take a shower or to change his clothes or whatever it might be, and he didn't want to do it, he couldn't say stop or I'll do it later, So all he knew how to do was to fight.
And he was a big guy and you were a petite lady. So yeah. It was even more challenging for that regard. Yeah.
Yes. And there were other times when bizarre behavior would manifest. I talk in my book about an instance where I had just fixed him a sandwich for lunch, and I tried to be really careful about leaving sharp objects out, but that particular day, I had a knife on the cutting board, and he picked up like a butcher knife and pointed it at me menacingly, and I just tried to stay calm, but keep separated between him, have the kitchen island separate us so that he didn't get too close. But it was scary because he wasn't himself. And I could tell that something had come over him that was very confusing and agitated. And so we just kind of, some other family members were in the house at the same time. So we all kind of kept our distance, and he just wandered around, and then he went and laid down on the bed and fell asleep with the knife on the pillow next to him. So we went and got it and made sure we didn't do that again. But when I was telling the doctor about these things, and he could see that I was absolutely exhausted, I was a nervous wreck, I was so depressed, I didn't know what to do. He said, he started asking me how much sleep are you getting, and asking me about my own health. And he said, from what you've told me about Glenn's behavior and what's going on at home, I can't believe that you're still trying to manage this at home. I'm going to have a social worker call you tomorrow. And that absolutely scared me to death because I never dreamed of doing it any other way. And I was very uneducated about what the options were that were out there, but I was in crisis. I wasn't getting any sleep at all, and I was so depressed I didn't know what to do. So I thought, well, I'll talk to her, and find, knowledge is power, and I need to educate myself about what resources are out there. So she called and she told me about in-home care, but I already had a great team at home. That wasn't my issue. And plus, Glenn was kind of paranoid. When a stranger would come into our home, he might think it was an invader,
Yes.
And he was combative, so that was risky. And then she told me about daycare, and I thought, well, getting him back and forth to daycare would be really challenging because Glenn had full-on panic attacks in the car. He would try to open the doors while I was driving, or he would start hyperventilating and try to take his clothes off. I mean, it was just crazy. So I could never drive him anywhere by myself. So that would involve, two people taking him to and then picking him up from daycare. And then she told me about memory care communities and respite care. And I didn't know these communities existed. I didn't know there were places that specialized in cognitive impairment, and that those places offer respite care. So I thought, well, at least I'll check into daycare and respite care, and at least, who knows, what if I need it someday? What if I get sick? Or anyway, so we we signed up for a day of daycare. And I love to tell this story. I was worried that he would be upset going to an unfamiliar place, and he would experience separation anxiety when I left. So I took a little child-sized guitar along with us, and I filled his pockets with guitar picks. And the minute we walked through the front door and he saw the smiling faces, he just lit up like a Christmas tree. And he started handing out picks and shaking everyone's hands. And it was like he was at a meet and greet before a show. And so we got comfortable, and then I went on home and I sat down at my kitchen table and cried all day because I felt so guilty and just I was just
Tell me about the
heartbroken
guilt. Yeah, tell me about the guilt, because
Yeah.
you talk about that a bit in your book, but I think it's something people will really relate to on it, whatever their caregiving situation is, whether it's with a parent, whether it's with a spouse, whether that person has chronic migraine or something else. So tell us about the guilt, because that's I think something we need to address. People need to address.
Yes, I felt guilty that I had left him somewhere, that I wasn't there physically taking care of him right that very minute. I felt shamed that I couldn't do it on my own. I felt like a failure. I just didn't know what to feel or think. But I thought, I'm just giving this a try. It's just one day, and maybe he'll enjoy it. So later on that evening, Ashley and I got in the car and we went to pick him up. And I was afraid he was going to be angry at me. But when I walked in, he was looking at a cookbook with one of the care partners and flipping the pages. And I said, "Hi, honey." And he looked up from the cookbook and he said, "Hi." And then he totally ignored me and went back to looking happily at his book. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is fantastic. First of all, I hadn't been able to get him interested in a book in quite a long time, but he did like to eat. So maybe it's the pictures of the food. But I said, "So how'd it go today?" And they said, "Well, right after you left, he took that little guitar and he stood up in the living room in front of all the other residents and he played them about 3 songs. Then he took a big bow, thanked them all for coming, went over to the sofa and took a nice long nap." So he had had a great day. He enjoyed being around people. He liked the socialization. I had, a miserable day because I was so caught up in my own feelings and worry and anxiety. But I took him home that night. And a lot of people with Alzheimer's experience something called sundowning.
Mm-hmm.
So the sun goes down, and I don't know what it is about it. And then they really don't understand it. But a lot of people with Alzheimer's get anxiety and get agitated at night. And he didn't know daytime from nighttime. So he was up all hours of the night, and he got, combative again. But actually, Ashley said to me, "Mom, you've had a hard day. Why don't you go to bed and get some sleep, and I will take the night watch and watch over Glenn." And we had this motion detector on Glenn, so anytime he popped up out of bed, we would go running to make sure, he made it to the bathroom, because there are bathroom issues.
Yeah.
When you forget what the toilet is, then you've got bathroom issues.
Yeah. So as part of this process, you started careliving.org as an organization and a website. Tell us about why you did that, when in this process, like you were learning things for yourself and you wanted to share, like what was that about? Where did that come from?
Yeah, after we tried daycare, and then we decided to try respite care, and it was working so beautifully that we decided to join a memory care community. And I always say I didn't put Glenn in a facility. I didn't place him in a home. Terminology is so important when you're making decisions in how you feel and how you make others feel. So what I say is our family joined a memory care community because it became my community too. I was there with other families going through the same things, and we supported each other and prayed for each other, and it was a really beautiful experience. But anyway, once we joined a memory care community, I made friends with a lot of other women there whose husbands had Alzheimer's, and so we formed a support group. And the first thing I realized in my support group was that on our very first meeting, as we were all telling our stories, everyone was just in tears. They were so depressed. they just needed to get it out, but I thought, this is just so unhealthy for us as caregivers to live years in this dark, deep depression and all this sadness. It's going to make us sick. So I started my website, careliving.org, to encourage other caregivers to look on the bright side of things, to see the glass half full instead of half empty, to find joy where it is to be found, and to try to create as much joy and happiness as you can. And so on my website, I started telling my story in the late stages of the disease. And I had other caregivers share theirs as well. I have doctors also weigh in. But the main thing about the stories on my website is that they're not sob stories. That's a given. So we don't need to go over that. Mm-hmm. But they're just short little stories that try to lift people up and try to help people maintain their sense of humor, to face, to also embrace faith, to give them the courage and the resilience, if you will, to face whatever they're facing with hope that, you're not going through it alone. There are other caregivers out there that understand how you feel, and that God loves you, and God is there to support you and lift you up. And God has the ability to work all things together for good. So that's what I put my faith and trust in. And every day was difficult. Every day was challenging.
Absolutely. So one of the things that you and I have talked about is how hard physically it is on caregivers to be a caregiver. And you had a statistic you shared with me about how it affects lifespan.
Yes, it can take as much as 10 years off of the caregiver's life. And I think the statistic is that 40% of caregivers die before the one they're caring for does. So I think the studies attribute a lot of that to the fact that caregivers neglect their own health. They don't get enough sleep. They don't eat right. They're depressed. Stress is a killer, It affects your blood pressure and your brain and your heart.
Yeah, and so to go back to that, you feeling guilty, I think part of the challenge with caregiving is that any of those activities which take time away from the loved one feel like I can't take time to exercise myself, or I can't take time to make a healthy meal because then I'm a bad person. Mm-hmm. And yet, in order to be around for each other, we have to care for ourselves. That's why I thought it was so important to talk to you today. Well, how would you define resilience, Kim? Because you've been through a lot of stuff in your life. You cover a lot in your book. And so tell us how you define the term resilience. What does it mean to you?
Resilience to me is to be able to get up every day, no matter what challenge you're facing or what difficulties you're experiencing, and face it with faith and determination to make the best of it. So every day I would get up, I would hope to wake up and think, the birds are singing, the sun is shining, I get ready to face my day. But, my eyes would open, and the reality of the love of my life, lost in his own mind, unable to communicate, helpless as a child, not living in my own home, was just so depressing, such a weight. So many other things too. You have financial issues. I became the head of the household. Just all kinds of personal things you might be going through as well. But
right, because life doesn't stop just because somebody's sick, right? There's all these other things that are going on too.
So from the time my eyes opened and I had that realization, I made a conscious choice. I started with prayer, and I would thank God just start counting your blessings. I had a roof over my head. I had children that loved me and supported me, and friends, and I had my own health, and I had a care team with me. So you can't do this alone. I think that's one of my main messages is if you try to do it alone, your own health will suffer. So you've got to educate yourself about what options are available to you and reach out for help, whether it's so many good organizations that can help. But I would count my blessings, then I would be determined that I'm going to be a blessing today. I'm going to bless others. And when you help others, you're really helping yourself, because you're finding purpose in your pain. And that's what I tried to do every day. And it really did help. And you keep your sense of humor. I can't say enough about that. And then I would also say that exercise, I'm a dancer. I've danced all my life, ballet, hip hop, jazz, whatever, listening to great music and dancing was my escape and my way to take care of my body. And sometimes even ballet, while I was doing my bar, it would be like a spiritual experience, because I would pray. I'd be so thankful that I could have this time for myself. So exercise, eating right, getting enough sleep, care team, sense of humor, faith, all those things will give you the strength you need to face whatever you're up against.
Yeah, and that's a great toolkit, regardless of how it might look slightly different for you. If someone that doesn't have a religious practice, meditation and just, sitting in the quiet,
Yes.
the gratitude practice, like however it looks for you, people who are watching, that's a great toolkit to depend on. So thank you so much, Kim.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for being here today and sharing your story. Please visit careliving.org to learn more about Kim's work. Glenn Campbell, I'll Be Me is available on Hulu, and it's well worth watching. It's very special and touching. And you can find Kim's book, Gentle on My Mind, in Sickness and in Health with Glenn Campbell, wherever books are sold. Check out other episodes of the Resilient series on Facebook Watch, IGTV, and YouTube. Follow me at SWeaverMPH to learn about my upcoming book, The Migraine Relief Plan Cookbook, which is due out in spring 2022 from Surrey Books. Thanks again for watching.